So Tucker Carlson went over to Israel to interview the supposed American ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, in this chaotic interview. And what's more chaotic, not only the interview portion, which I tried to listen to just the audio. I tried to download it to my phone because I was out and about, so I was trying to listen to the audio to it. I couldn't even last 5 minutes of it. It was just so bad. It was so bad. It was so rampant. It was just so misleading. It was just so propagandized. Mike Huckabee, uh, he is literally the biggest schmuck to Israel there is. Like, it's amazing that this guy has not been questioned on whether or not this man should still obtain American citizenship. Because what it sounded like to me, and you're about to see in this interview, is Mike Huckabee is not an American. Mike Huckabee has no presence of being American whatsoever. Being an American ambassador to a foreign country. That's not how it's supposed to work, though. That's not how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to be a citizen of America representing and having diplomatic relations with another country. You're not supposed to represent the foreign country. That's not how it's supposed to work. But what's more chaotic about this is the drama behind the scenes of just trying to have this interview. So here's Tucker Carlson explaining about his arrival to Israel and how him and his producers were detained in Israel at the airport immediately as they got off the plane. They took passports. They took one of the producers to an enclosed door. They told them, spilling information. Well, here's what Tucker Carlson said about it.
So we show up on Wednesday, fly in from Europe, again at great expense, and show up at the diplomatic terminal at Ben Gurion Airport where this interview is going to take place, which is bizarre in itself. A filthy building. The windows are so dirty in the terminal you can't see out them barely. There's like exposed drywall. The whole thing is depressing and grim. There's litter outside. Like, what is this? This is the diplomatic terminal in Israel. I thought that was very strange. Having been in a lot of diplomatic terminals, I've never seen a rattier one. We go in, and Huckabee's there, and of course he's totally friendly as he always is.
But in the words of Jon Stewart, that's freedom, baby. That's freedom, baby. That's after when remember Tucker Carlson went over to Russia and he showed people like how the train station looked like a $1,000 stay art gallery. Like it was a multi-million-dollar building with, murals and just artifacts, and it was just so wonderful. And then you look at the New York City subway, or you look at the TTC in Toronto, it's like, yeah, Russia may be onto something. I hate to break it to people, but maybe we could actually learn something from Russia instead of constantly derailing them as authoritarian or, with China as being communist. Well, have you seen the economic power that they have? Have you seen how luxurious these cities are, how well maintained these communities are? Maybe we can learn something from them. Anyway, heard this.
Very, very friendly guy and cheerful and sort of chat. And the whole place is filled with these guys in t-shirts, thuggish looking guys in t-shirts who are some kind of security. So we do the interview. You're about to watch it. It's very long, at 2.5 hours-ish. And I try my hardest to be friendly. I think I kind of succeeded. You can judge for yourself. But I really got the sense, and again, you can decide as you watch it, that Huckabee was not able to answer any of the questions, but also not really in charge. You really got the feeling of a guy sort of trying his best to repeat the talking points, but very constrained, like unable to say certain things. Not because those things might harm the interest of the U.S. government. He was happy to attack, for example, the U.S. military and say they're more brutal than the Israeli military. Okay. But
again, Mike Huckabee is supposed to be an American citizen who's the ambassador to a foreign country, meaning that all he's supposed to do, all that job title is supposed to be a part of, is just having diplomatic relations with that country. You're not supposed to embark it and become that part of the region. You're not supposed to become an asset to the foreign country. You're just supposed to have diplomatic relations. But you're going to see in the interview, holy crap, I could not last not even 5 minutes of just listening to the audio because it was just so rampantly biased towards Israel. So coming from an American ambassador. Like, it shows how much of a traitor Mike Huckabee is. Well, let's hear Let's hear the rest of Tucker Carlson here.
unwilling to say certain things because they might reflect poorly on the Israeli government. And you sort of think about this for a second. You're like, wait, you're the U.S. ambassador. You're our representative to a foreign country. Why is your red line criticism of that country? Shouldn't you be representing us? And it was very obvious he was representing the Israelis. Obvious. And again, you can judge for yourself. But anyway, so we did this interview. It was cordial. And at the end, we're set to fly out. We have a time. We have to get out. And the plane is sitting right outside. And we're ready to go. And for some reason, the Israelis still have our passports. There are 5 of us there. And 4 of us are flying out on this plane. One's flying out commercial with our gear. So my business partner and I, which were standing there, we've never left the airport, never went anywhere. But our 2 producers have spent the night before in Tel Aviv. And they're called into rooms and given the 3rd degree. Now, keep in mind, they're about to get on a plane and leave. In fact, we're late. We have to get out of there. We have a slot to get out. And security, whoever this is, won't let them go. So I don't really know what's going on at this point. I'm like, where are our guys? We got to get out of here. So one of them comes out and he says, that was the weirdest experience in my life. They asked me questions about the interview. Who did you speak to? Keep in mind, this was like 8 feet from where we did the interview. Well, the U.S. ambassador, Mike Huckabee, what did you talk about? Why did you ask those questions? Was it a hostile interview? And of course, everything in the diplomatic terminal is taped. Everything in Israel is taped. It's a police state. It's a surveillance state, obviously. You go to Israel, they put software on your phone. Everybody knows this. They're constantly spying on you more than probably any other country.
Think about that. Think about that. The most democratic nation in the Middle East is interrogating Americans who are supposed to be the greatest ally to Israel right now. They're obviously doing the dirty work and bidding for the country, so you think they'd be welcomed with open arms. And they're getting detained and questioned worse than any other place in the world. Worse than China. Communist China is allowing for visa-free occupancy of British and Canadian citizens to go to China, a communist country, without this backhandling, without the questions, without the interrogation. Think how crazy that is. Think how crazy that is. And yet I'm supposed to fear China over this? I'm supposed to fear China, the communist country that supposedly was supposed to do something like this, but apparently it's coming from Israel, the most morally democratic nation in the Middle East. Wow.
And so they know the answers to these questions, but they're asking my producer, like, where do you work? How many people work there? Do you go to the office? Where is the office? What are their names? They're doing like an intel op and humiliation exercise on my producer. This isn't security. We're leaving right now. And they're holding his passport. The interrogator is holding the passport in his hand as he's asking these questions. So he's telling me this, and I said, this is the most outrageous thing I've ever heard. Huckabee's gone by this point. You're an American citizen who's just had a conversation with the U.S. ambassador, and some thug is demanding details of that conversation? I hope you didn't answer. And he's like, no, I didn't. I don't know what to say. Meanwhile, our last guy, the youngest man who was traveling with us, our last producer, is still in a room being questioned. So I pull over one of the guys and said, we got to get out of here. So I don't know what this is about. It's outrageous. And, there's nothing I can do at this point, but we got to go. And this woman comes up to me and says, look, let's just go. We're going to bring you to the plane and he'll come later. I said, no, it's my producer. He's being interrogated, asked totally over the top, fully inappropriate questions that have nothing to do with security at all. Pull up your website, show us your text exchanges with other people on your staff. What are your politics like? And again, what did you say to the U.S. ambassador and what did he say back to you? Those are not relevant questions if you're trying to keep your country secure. Those are intel questions. And
those are blackmail questions. Because in order to keep the nation of Israel afloat, they have to blackmail people. They have to. They have to rise anti-Semitism to convince enough Jewish people that Zionism is their only cause. It's literally a nation run by criminals, run by cartels, run by gangsters. That's the only thing that's keeping this country afloat. If they didn't have the blackmail, if they didn't have the intel operations, if they didn't interrogate, Tucker Carlson's producers and ask the most bizarre questions like, where do you live? How many kids you have? What's your family like? What's your political status? What does that have to do with the interview? They're asking that because they want to blackmail those people. And ironically enough, Tucker Carlson, who was voted the anti-Semite of the year last year, going to Israel, had to do this interview right at the airport. He wasn't allowed to leave the airport because the intel operations behind Mike Huckabee, who's supposed to be an American, is not allowing this foreign country the presence of an American. Why would Mike Huckabee do that? Because he doesn't work for America. Hence why people should be questioning the intent of Mike Huckabee. Is he really an American citizen, or is he giving all that out to serve the purpose of the Holy Land Israel, the blackmail behemoth of the biblical proportion? And you're going to see in the interview, he really gets into the absurd details of this. They're going to biblical proportions, which is absolutely hysterical. Coming from someone that, you know, I admit I'm not theology aware. Like, I was a Sunday school student for the, you know, first 10 years of my life, and I didn't really pay attention that much. And, you know, I'm not as, you know, biblically knowledgeable on certain subject matter, but, you know, there's certain snippets here and there. And I've heard people discuss about this, and I know people that are more, you know, more religiously conscious than someone like me. They don't believe this nonsense. They don't believe the nonsense that Mike Huckabee is spewing about this garbage. So here is Al Jazeera reporting on this. Tucker Carlson says passport seized, staff interrogated at Israeli airport. If Israeli officials denied detaining the right-wing figure, calling the questioning routine and conducted to ensure privacy. That's what you do, right? You bring your producers in, you ask them about where they live, where they work, how many kids they have, personal details, because it's about privacy, right? Privacy. That's from Israel, they're saying. And at the same time, Israel's saying that Tucker Carlson's a nutcase, that, oh, that never happened. We allowed for him to come around, but, you know, he's just making kooky thoughts because he's anti-Semitic. Well, just remind people, not the first time they did this to a journalist, and it won't be the last. So, Gray Zone journalist kidnapped by IDF remains in custody. This was, how long ago was this again? This is 2024. So it's been over 24 hours since the Gray Zone's Jeremy Lafredo, along with 3 other journalists, were brutally being kidnapped, blindfolded, and dragged into an Israeli military base. I'm sure it's for privacy, right? I'm sure it's for privacy, not for blackmail, not for deceit, not for intel, not for the fact that, hey, we're going to squash journalists because they're reporting our mishandling, our wrongdoings, and we don't want to be exposed. So, of course, I believe Tucker Carlson because it's not the first or the last time that Israeli forces would do something like this to a journalist, regardless of who they are and regardless if they're anti-Semitic or not. Because this is what they're known for. This is what they do. They're blackmail. It's a blackmail operation to keep Israel afloat. So, getting into the interview now, and like I said, I tried to listen to this. I could not bear. Like, listening to Mike Huckabee is like all the compilations of, you know, those early morning, you know, right-wing kind of religious nutcase shows that you see on TV. What's that famous one? 700 Club, where they talk about, hey, if your wife burns the pot roast, adultery is okay. Like, that's how deranged these people are. They're not even talking about the Bible. They're just saying that, oh, I have immunity over so-and-so. I'm allowed to do whatever I want because somewhere in this book, it commands me to. God commands me. God told me that I'm allowed to hit my child because they're listening to music. Like, that's the vibe I get from Mike Huckabee. What a schmuck this guy is. And you're about to see here Tucker Carlson, who's simply just asking basic questions, not being anti-Semitic, not, you know, being derogatory, just asking simple questions to an American ambassador about Israel. And Mike Huckabee has a freak out and literally broke him down. So here's a part of the interview. Tucker Carlson just asking basic questions, and Mike Huckabee is just completely losing it.
In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total, and 8 million of them live here. The rest live mostly in New York or South Florida, and a few other places.
Okay.
So this is a small population of people. They have connection to this land, historically, biblically.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
If Bibi's family, we know they lived in Eastern Europe. There's no evidence they ever lived here. He's not religious.
But
in what sense how do we know
ancestrally,
do you have his family tree? No, we don't.
Do you?
He doesn't. So no one does. That's the point.
But
so how do we know that he has any connection to this land at all?
So this is the argument. This is the argument, because they always say that, Israel has the right to exist because God chose those people to live in that territory. Well, do we know that for sure? Do we know that for sure? Because there's no definite explanation to say that these group of people belong in this specific land. And when you look at the Bible, for instance, there's no deep description about the fact that it's a certain landmark. And in fact, the Bible really goes against the modern day of Israel and preaches about Israel, the person, which is Abraham's son Jacob, who goes by the name Israel. There's more abound towards him that people praising the son of Abraham will be blessed versus the landmass that they complicitly believe that they're entitled to. So they don't even know their own understanding. And that's what makes this so insanely barbaric, is the fact that you got these so-called Christian Zionists who don't really follow the messagings of Christ, who don't really follow the messagings of what the Bible actually teaches them. A lot of these people don't even read the Bible, believe it or not. But they'll just tell you that, oh yeah, somewhere in that book, we're entitled to this. God chose us to rule that country. Really? Really? So if God commanded you to rule this country, why was there no Israel before 1947? Why did you have to do the Nakba to kill a bunch of Palestinians if God is already commanding you to take control of this country? I think God was around much longer than any Palestinian. So why would God? It again just makes absolutely no sense. But here's more to this. And by the way, yeah, that's true that Benjamin Netanyahu came from Eastern Europe. Benjamin Netanyahu is not actually Netanyahu. His real name is Milkowski. He comes from Europe. And if you look at the Balfour Declaration, if you look at the Rothschilds, you look at the history of the formation of Zionism and modern-day Israel, it goes back to British Empire. Well, guess who was in control of Palestine at that time? The British Empire. Funny how that is. Funny how that is.
If there has been a practice of Judaism and a connection to the language, the Bible, the land.
His ancestors didn't. He doesn't practice Judaism in any rigorous way. His ancestors didn't live here. They didn't speak the language, and there's no evidence they ever lived here. So on what basis does he have a right to be here?
Very much speaks the language. He has fought for the land. His family has fought for the land.
You're dodging a very obvious question, which is, where does this right come from? And the reason it's meaningful is because there are a lot of people in the territory that Israel controls today, particularly in the West Bank, who, through genetic testing, we can know their families have been here for thousands of years. We don't know whether they practiced Judaism, whether they were Samaritans, pre-Islam. We don't know that.
And ironically enough, guess which country outlaws genetic testing, DNA testing to find ancestral heritage? Israel! Go figure. The country that commands people that they're destined to be in this territory, that they're the chosen people, that their blood aligns with the Messiah and the coming of Christ. They are destined to take over this territory. They will not allow genetic testing to prove if they're Middle Eastern. Because that, exactly what Tucker Carlson's saying, would absolutely destroy that argument. Because a lot of these people, from Ben Gurion to Netanyahu, whose real name is Milkowski, to Golda Meir, to all these people, all the people that are telling you that you had to come here because it's the safe space for Jews, They all don't come from the Middle East. They come from elsewhere. It's a collaboration of the Zionists, this death cult that wants to displace the rest of the world, destroy and conquer. That's what the Balfour, that's what the Declaration was about. That's what Rothschilds are trying to introduce into modern day Zionism. It has nothing to do with Judaism. They're using Judaism as a deflection, the same way that the Ku Klux Klan used Christianity as a deflection. Christianity doesn't command people to be racist, but racists use that as a deflection so that anyone that critiques them, oh, you must be the Antichrist because God loves chosen people. Isn't that interesting? That the Ku Klux Klan and modern day Zionists kind of very similar. You don't see that. You don't really see that until you actually look through how they kind of, the dialects, what they kind of preach, how they both believe that they're the chosen people and the rest of the world are just, animals, they're pigs, they're goyim. They don't belong here. We are the conquerors. We are the powerful. Isn't that kind of interesting? But again, let's see some more of this.
A lot of them we know have been Christians for 2,000 years. They have less of a right to the land than someone whose ancestors, the only thing we know about them is they lived in Latvia or Poland. They're Eastern European. How does that work?
They're Jewish.
By what definition?
They're Jewish by their
But how do we know they have any connection
they're
to
Jewish
the Jews
by their
of the,
faith. They're
of the
Jewish
Bible?
by the connection to the language. Jewish by the connection to the Torah.
But how do we know that Bibi, specifically Bibi's ancestors, ever lived here? How do we know that?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
How do we know if the Prime Minister of Israel's ancestors ever lived?
Maybe I could ask you, how do we know they didn't? I mean,
well, it's on the basis of the claim that they did that all kinds of things happen. People.
That's what I call Barry Weissing the question. I have no idea what you are talking about, sir. After you just had a 10-minute conversation about this, I have no idea what you're trying to say. I cannot comprehend that. You must be a Qatar toady. Jamie, can you look that up? Can you look that up? I think I'm using it right. Toady? I heard that on like a podcast show. I can't remember the guy's name, but oh yeah, he's another bigot, racist, guy who took ivermectin. He's anti-science. No wonder they go hand in hand. No wonder. Wow. I mean, that's such a simple question. Such a simple question. Because we know from the ancestral history of Benjamin Netanyahu, whose real name is Mikowski, there is no deep connection between him being in Europe, where this all started with the European and British Empire controlling Palestine. There is no dissent on how Benjamin Netanyahu is a defender of the Middle East because he is destined to be part of it. Like, there's no definitive proof of that. And that's what Tucker Carlson's saying. How can we prove that? How can we prove that? Your country doesn't even allow genetic testing. They don't even allow ancestral testing because they don't want citizens to know, they don't want Israelis to know that, yeah, they're living on stolen land. They don't want people to know that they are not Middle Eastern, that they came from other parts of the world, and that's why anti-Semitism has run amok. That's why they want to scare everybody with anti-Semitism, tell you how unsafe you are in places like New York or Hollywood or Miami Beach. So unsafe that you have to pack your bags, you have to fly to this Israel territory that they're beating up Jewish people to be complicit of Zionism. This is all engineering. This is all socio-theology. This is a cult engineered across the world. And it's been going on for decades. And people are starting to wake up to this because October 7th happened, and it awakened people to realize that this is all part of the manufacturing. This is all to keep Israel afloat. If they didn't have October 7th, if they did not have October 7th and purposely lied and misled people and did the Hannibal Directive, which engaged in tax on Israeli citizens, then a lot of people would have no idea about Israel. But you showcase that, you highlighted that, you brag about it on the internet, you dance around in women's underwear after doing rapid fire against an innocent family. You are the ones promoting this. You are the ones promoting anti-Semitism. You're engaging in this because it's all part of the social construct that keeps Israel afloat. Because without it, Jews would be happy anywhere. But no, they have to scare people. They have to scare with this anti-Semite. They have to say Tucker Carlson, for being a journalist, is an anti-Semite for asking these questions to get people to Israel. It's all part of the scheme, ladies and gentlemen. So here's another clip of this. And I can only show this in clips because, again, I tried so hard to listen to this in full, and I just couldn't. I couldn't stomach this. So then they move on to the question about Iran, because that's next on the agenda. Is obviously Netanyahu went to America once again to push Trump towards war with Iran, which is exactly what they want. Americans don't want that. Nobody wants another outrageous war. We're already paying off for the disasters of Ukraine, the disaster of Afghanistan. That's why majority of people my age can't afford to buy homes. That's why the country's amok. You know, we're paying for the operation of hijacking Venezuela. We're paying for all these stupid stunts across the world. Why would we ever want to take another chance at Iran? Well, because Israel wants that. And whatever Israel wants, they're going to blackmail, they're going to deceive, they're going to deprive, and they're going to manipulate people to complicity. So Tucker Carlson asked about this question because Americans don't want a war with Iran. Polls are showing that. And Mike Huckabee says, well, we don't care about the polls. We don't care about Americans. As an American ambassador, we don't care about the thoughts of Americans. So again, this is why we really need to question Mike Huckabee in the fact that are you now an Israeli citizen now? Have you given up all American status? Because that really needs to be in question. Who are you working for? Okay, stop this dual loyalty bullshit and decide who exactly you work for. Well, I think it's obviously proven in this.
The question, how much does it matter what Americans think?
Well, it matters every bit what Americans think. That's why Americans vote. It's why Americans have the opportunity to have free speech. We want them to have that.
Okay, so what percentage of Americans support a war with Iran?
I don't know. Do you?
As Israeli billionaires are telling Americans, give up your free speech. Telling you that.
You know?
I do. I think it's around, I saw the numbers yesterday. I think it was like 21%.
Okay.
Is that enough to have a war with Iran?
We don't live in a world where you have a poll taken to find out whether our policy should be a particular direction. Because
I thought you just said that
that's
we
direct democracy.
vote.
No, we care deeply about it. But on the other hand, do we make the decisions of foreign policy and even domestic policy based on
we
what
care
the
deeply
latest
about
poll
it in
number
what
is?
sense? If we're ignoring it, then in what sense do we, quote, care deeply about it?
So, to put that in layman's terms, you have the choice, but we don't actually execute the choice that people make. Meaning that democracy is a staged event. And this is what, unfortunately, I've been revealing to people. And I know people are hard to take that in, but democracy really is theatrics. Like, you go, you vote, you participate in these polls, you think that one candidate is better than the other. In the end, they're all bots, they're all part of the same institutions, they're all corrupted towards each other. So really, you don't have a choice. And that's what Mike Huckabee is telling people. Yeah, we believe in America, and we think Americans have the right to choice, and we support that. But in the end, we're just going to do whatever we want. So screw that. Screw you and your polls. Like, I don't care what Americans think. Well, you just said you care about Americans think. Yeah, but in the end, everyone's bought. You have owners. They own you.
Well, I think we care deeply when we see there's a threat.
No, but about Americans' opinions. So you've got 350 million Americans. Yeah. They voted in this last election on the basis, in part, of the promise no more wars. Okay, mm-hmm. So now we're about to have a war, looks like. 80% of people are against it. In that range, let's say 70%, but nowhere near majority support for this war. And it's not direct democracy, but it is a form of democracy. It's representative democracy.
The ultimate form of democracy in our system, in a republic, because we're not a true democracy, we're a republic.
Exactly, right? It's a mediated democracy.
It'll be an opportunity for Americans to vote if they think that we've made the wrong policy decisions. I personally think the president is making the right policy decisions.
But I guess, but you just said it matters deeply what Americans think, and if the overwhelming majority are against it, in what sense does it matter? Because what I hear is it matters what they think, but it really doesn't matter what they think because...
No, you take it in, you certainly ingest that.
And then what do you do with it once you ingest it?
Then you make sure that you have... No,
you just gotta... It goes out the other end, obviously.
No.
So, yeah, Carlson just, again, asking simple questions. Simple questions is breaking Mike Huckabee because Mike Huckabee is in a cult. He's brainwashed. He's been taken over. He has mind control. He has a virus called Zionism afflicting him. Like, literally, he says, "Oh, we care about Americans, but in the end, like democracy, like we can't execute the things that people choose because that's not how it works, Tucker." He's literally breaking down. Because Tucker Carlson is just pointing out the fact that, yeah, a lot of people don't want another war. That's what the last election was about. That's why people rushed towards Donald Trump, because they knew with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, there was going to be more conflict with Ukraine. They thought they were going to wrap that up. Turns out Donald Trump's not going to wrap that up. It's just going to keep on going. And, you know, they thought they gambled with a game show host because he promised in his campaign that there was going to be no more wars. And we thought that. I didn't have full-fledged support for Donald Trump, but I thought maybe there was some hope, little tiny hope, maybe with Tulsi Gabbard near him and like RFK, like these individuals. Well, it turns out none of that matters. And that's Mike Huckabee revealing that. Like, none of it matters. Oh, we could say we care about the American opinion. We could say we care about, but in the end, nothing matters. Democracy, yeah, we live in a republic, but, you know, in the end, you have owners, and owners bought you, and shut up. Wow. I mean, just what an absolute disgrace. And it gets so worse, ladies and gentlemen. It gets so worse. So here's the final clip I want to show you. So it looks like we're going to war with Iran. And I have speculated this since October 7th because, you know, I didn't really know much about Israel. I knew about, you know, the Gaza open air detention facility and the mistreatment of Palestinians because of Max Blumenthal and Dan Cohen killing Gaza, their documentary. I've seen that. I've seen Abby Martin's reporting on it, so I knew a bit about that, but I didn't know how extensive this was. And ever since October 7th, as I've been doing deep dives and researching more about Israel and looking at the backstory and understanding, you know, this whole prophecy, the Greater Israeli Project, and, you know, why they conflate Zionism to Judaism and how they blackmail and deceive country after country, government after government, how it's literally just a cruel mafia that is trying to dominate over the world because they they believe in their cultish mind behavior that they are the superior beings. They're the superior race. Again, just like the Ku Klux Klan, just like all these nefarious cults. That's why I've been saying Zionism is a death cult. It's nothing to do with Judaism. It's nothing to do with Christianity. It's a death cult. And they're using religion as their scapegoat, as their method to excuse any rational talking point, any rational conversation with an individual by saying that you're, anti-Semitic, which has nothing to do with Semitics. In fact, if you look at the actual ancestral heritage, the Semites are Palestinians. Semites is a language. Nothing to do with race or credence. It has to do with a language. And if you look at Palestinians, they are Semites. They are Semites. But it doesn't stop there, because now Tucker Carlson goes to ask Mike Huckabee about, okay, so you're taking over Gaza, taking over the West Bank. The Greater Israeli Project wants to go into Lebanon, wants to go into Syria, wants to go into Egypt, wants to go into, Saudi Arabia. But now you're going to war with Iran, and you're also, bringing up Iraq and Afghanistan and all these other militant territories. When is it going to end? And that's something that I've been speculating on. Is Palestine just it? Or is the Israeli cult mindset going to keep embarking on this? They're going to keep pushing the levers to try to gain more land. They're going to try and oust more people and kill more people, because they strongly believe, they psychotically believe that they are the superior race amongst everybody else. So when is this going to end? That's the ultimate question. And here is Tucker Carlson asking Mike Huckabee this. And Mike Huckabee is going to say that, well, in the biblical sense, we don't know. And we might just take over. Take a listen.
Genesis 15 says it's Abram, it's pre-Abraham, it's Abram, receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land. And you tell me as the theologian if I'm getting this wrong, but from the Euphrates to the Nile. I think that's right. And that would include basically the entire Middle East. That would be the Levant. So that would be Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. It would also be big parts of Saudi Arabia and Iraq. It would be,
not sure it would go that far. It would be a big piece of land, but here's the point.
It would be a lot of places that are now countries.
But this particular area that we're talking about now, Israel, is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose. It was a people, a place, and a purpose. We can look at it that way. Christian Zionism, I want to go back because that's where we started.
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said it 3 times that God gave this land to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. Mm-hmm. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis.
Yeah.
You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all.
So, clearly, Tucker Carlson is having this really, spiritual debate, which I think we need to have. Honestly, we need to have. We need to literally question, interrogate these so-called Christian Zionists and really hold them account to their biblical ethics. Because if they are a follower of Christ, if they really believe in Jesus, they would not be partaking in this. They would not be partaking in Israel. They would not partaking in wars. Because Jesus forbade people to fight onslaught wars that pillaged and destroyed these areas. He didn't want wars to be conducted all around the world. So you going off to war and saying that it's part of your Christian duty, well, guess what? That's not what Christ wants. That's not what Jesus stood for. Jesus stood for peace. He stood for equality. He stood for humanity towards all men. And Mike Huckabee was asked this. Mike Huckabee is supposed to be this, philosophical, like very, very uppity and in religious talks. He's supposed to be very, theology. He's supposed to understand scripture. He's supposed to be like the professor when it comes to the biblical proportions. He hosted shows on Fox News back in the day to teach people about scripture. He can't answer that. He just said, yeah, we'll just take all of it. Like, this is what I mean. The mindset of the Zionist, that there's no stopping point. There's no stopping point. Because at first, it was, we got to go after Hamas that stole our hostages. Okay. Well, now we got to go into Gaza and kill those people. Okay, that's barbaric. Okay, now you're going to the West Bank. Why are you going to the West Bank? Now you're going to Lebanon. Now you're fighting Yemen. Now you're doing this. Now you're doing that. Now you want to go to war with Iran. Now you want to go here. So when is it going to end? When is it going to end? Truth of the matter is, they don't have an end point. They're going to keep this going because they are so sinister. They are so sinister. They honestly believe that they are God's chosen people, which that is also a kind of fictitious lie, because you're talking about the same God that says he loves everybody, but apparently these maniac, bloodthirsty death cults is more favorable than anyone else on earth. That doesn't make sense. And you're basically pillaging nonstop all across the Middle East without a stopping point. And Mike Huckabee says, yeah, we're just going to, we take all of it over. We take Iraq. We can take Afghanistan. We'll take all of it. So this is what I mean. Where's the stopping point? Where's the stopping point? Because I was under the influence. I was told that this is about October 7th. This is about the hostages. This is about, no. It's about Palestinian. No, it's about this. No, it's about that. So they keep changing the goalposts because that is how sick and twisted, psychotic these people are. And that's why Mike Huckabee is, I can't even say he's not American. He is not American. He has that in his job title. He's supposed to be the American ambassador to Israel. But I can tell you, that is not an American opinion. That is not an American opinion. That is a foreign asset posing as an American, allowing an American journalist to be detained and having the producer being interrogated with personal questions to blackmail and manipulate people to get information about this. And Mike Huckabee is just allowing it. Mike Huckabee is serving Israel. Not serving America. He's not doing diplomatic relations for Israel. He's serving Israel. And that's what we saw there. It's no different if you interview Ben Gurion in this. No different response. And ultimately, it's just so disgusting. It is so disgusting. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that we have people representing this so-called ally, even though I can't name a single thing that makes them an ally. Like, do we have a good partnership in business? Do we have a good partner? No, it's all about blackmail. It's all about blackmail. It's all about deceit. They suck you in. They lure you in. That's what they try to do with Charlie Kirk. That's what they try to do with these influencers. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And when that doesn't work, they look for other alternatives. And you know what I'm talking about. It really is just sick how far this death cult, how far these sycophantic criminal gangsters will go to keep this mentality afloat. And clearly there's no stopping ground. According to Mike Huckabee, they could just keep going. They go all the Middle East for all they care. For a country that only has a population of 8 million people. You know, there's 90 million people in Iran. 90 million people in Iran. How do you think that's going to work out if they go to war with Iran? 90 million people versus 8. The math kind of speaks for itself.